Talked about the fossil record as our first strand of evidence for evolution. Fossil record. And now we've talked a little bit about structural evidence. Morphological evidence. I'll put morph, period. The kind of work that you just did, measuring those lizard limbs and tails and stuff, is the exact kind of work that biologists do to say who's related to who, who's the ancestor species, all of these lizards on this island share this feature, and that's how we find those morphological similarities. And then they actually start arranging them. Literally, a lot of science is not only collecting data, but organizing that data in graphs and charts are amazing. So we're going to start to talk today about the third strand. What's the third strand? Chemical evidence. And the chemical that everybody thinks about, the first chemical that everybody thinks about, is the chemical that all living things on planet Earth use to transmit genetic information. What's that? DNA. Every single living thing that we have ever encountered on this planet, and we have not yet, to the best of our knowledge, encountered living things from other planets yet. It could happen. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen when you're old people. I don't know when it's going to happen. Anyway, so chemical evidence includes DNA. That's not the only chemical that your bodies make. Your bodies make DNA, but what do they use DNA to make?
Cells.
What's the chemical that DNA actually carries the blueprint for? We talked about synthesizing this. Protein in your cells. Yeah, protein. Your cells are constructing protein right now.
Wow.
If you're very quiet, you can hear the little amino, no, you can't. Little amino acids are being carried over to ribosomes by sections of transfer RNA. It's all getting put together. Proteins are another chemical that we see. I can never spell the word protein. And it's been so long, I'm just not even embarrassed about it anymore. There, I think that's right. I'm not sure. You can spell check me. So we've got chemical evidence of... Okay, so we have human. I could have taken a picture of one of you, but I've got this ridiculous woman with stickers all over her face. I don't know who she thinks she is. So this human, you humans, you glorious, magnificent, multicellular organisms, you are so complex and interesting. You really are. Look at all the things you can do. You have thumbs. You build stuff. You're kind of a big deal. You can stick stickers on your face. How much DNA would you guess any human shares with a fruit fly? 0 to 100%.
100%. 50. Like 25.
So I hear 25, I hear 100, I hear 50. Anybody got anything else?
Well, you might as well say 75. Just goes with this.
How much DNA do you think you have in common with a fruit fly? 17. 0. Okay. So how much DNA do you think you have in common with a mouse? Now, do you think you're more or less similar to a mouse than you are to a fruit fly?
You almost are a mouse.
More similar.
Why do you think you're more similar? What do you have in common with a mouse? Pardon? We're both mammals. We both give live birth. We both nurse our offspring. We both have fur. Yes. We both have claws. Yes.
Oh, man, I got some sharp claws.
Yeah. So how much DNA do you think you have in common with a mouse? Do you think it's more or less than you have in common with a fruit fly? Okay, so we think that you have more DNA in common with a mouse. What's your guess?
100.
You think you have 100% of your DNA in common with a mouse?
43.5.
43.5. Okay.
Yeah, about like 33%.
33%. Okay. Now, what about this fine friend here?
100. That's my brother.
You don't even have 100% of your DNA in common with your brother.
Oh.
So,
Well, not 100.
do you think this is a pretty high number?
Yeah, it's about 78.
You think 78,
That's like 99.
99? Okay. So, You are correct that you have more. So do you think you have more in common with the chimp than with the mouse? They're both mammals, right?
Yeah, chimp for sure.
Okay. So you think you have more in common with the chimp than with the mouse, and more in common with the mouse than the fruit fly?
Yes.
What do you have in common with the fruit fly?
Paired legs.
You got paired appendages.
Vertebrae.
Do fruit flies have backbones?
2 eyes.
Insects are they're invertebrates. Insects have no backbone. They have an external skeleton called an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
You learned that. You forgot it. It's okay. So, what else do you have? So, paired appendages, what else? Eyes. What else? You're both animals. You're both consumers. Neither of you can photosynthesize. You have working organs. You have organ systems.
A brain.
Actually, insects, what they have is called a nerve ganglion. So it's not really a brain. It's like a clump of nerves up near their head. It's not an actual brain. It is called a nervous ganglion. They also don't have lungs. They have little holes in the side of their body, and they exchange air through that. So if you cover a fruit fly in Vaseline, it will die. Because monkeys have a brain. Mice have a brain. Mice have brains. So, drum roll. So when you look at the DNA sequence for humans from humans and fruit flies, you share 60% of the genes that a fruit fly has.
Oh, wow.
I was off.
Most people think it's a lot smaller than that. You actually share 60% of the genes that a fruit fly has. And when we look at mice, which are a mammal, and you guys were great at identifying that they're mammals, we have lots in common with them. We got fur, we give live birth, we nurse our young, paired appendages, 4 limbs, we're all tetrapods. We're all tetrapods here. Tetra means 4. Pod is feet. Tetrapods are 4-footed creatures. When we get up to chimps, our genome is 99% identical to a chimpanzee.
We got thumbs.
Huh?
We got thumbs.
You got thumbs. They got thumbs. They have opposing thumbs. They have opposable thumbs. They communicate. They actually, what's interesting, there are 2 species of chimp, and I can't remember I think they just call one chimpanzees. The other is called the bonobo chimp, which is a distinct species. Chimps are quite violent. They engage in war against other chimp groups. They murder. Chimps have been witnessed. This is disturbing and brutal. Male chimps have been seen stealing babies from other chimp tribes and murdering them.
Oh my God.
I mean, chimps are pretty brutal. So, when we talk about the basis of human behavior and, some of the nastier, uglier things humans do, our cousins do them too. Now, bonobos, interestingly enough, do not. Bonobos are incredibly peaceful, and I'll let you look up for yourself what their general social lubricant is, but bonobos generally do not engage in that kind of violent warfare and that kind of behavior. But chimps and us got a lot in common, for good and for bad. They're tool users like us. They're tool-using primates. Question. We've got these differences in DNA. And actually, what I have here, we haven't talked about chromosomes yet. We will. This is the human chromosome. Do you know how many you have? There's a company out there right now called Something in Me. Have you heard this? 23andMe. 23andMe.
Chromosomes.
You have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. You got 23 from yo mama. You got 23 from yo papa. Chimps have 24 pairs. And if you look closely at chromosome number 2 in humans, it adds up to the same length as what are called 2A and 2B in chimps. And there are these special little areas on the end of chromosomes called a telomere. Telo means end. And if you look at the human chromosome, there's an area here in the middle that appears to have old telomeres. So it's likely that at some point in our ancestry, we had more chromosomes, and at some point those fused. So we now have a different chromosomal number than chimps do. So their pathway has 24 chromosomes. Our pathway has 23 chromosomes. just a little trivia, if anybody asks. Now, just like we've looked at those morphological differences and the more structures two organisms share, like, oh, they both have paired appendages. Oh, they both have vertebrae. Oh, they both have hair. They must be more closely related. Guess what? We can use cladograms with DNA. Whoa. Is that what?
Is that a carrot?
That is a lance. No.
Am I related to a vegetable?
It's a lancelet, which is an outgroup. That's an invertebrate. So in some cladograms, you put something in that's not. Yeah, you are actually related to a carrot.
Really?
Yes, you're related to a carrot. You're related to a bunch of bananas. You share 25% of your DNA with bananas. Get over yourself. That was a T-shirt. Yes, that was a T-shirt years ago. Bright yellow T-shirt with a bunch of bananas, and it said, you share 25% of your DNA with the bananas. Get over yourself. Which I always thought was kind of nice. The more closely related two species are, the more DNA they have in common. Because the more closely related they are, the more closely they have a common ancestor in the past. So let's talk about your family. Okay, so we're going to say this is you. These two are siblings. Are they closely related? Yeah. Do they share a pretty high amount of DNA? Yes. So those siblings each have inherited about half of their DNA from each parent. Of all the DNA that makes humans different one to the other, they share a pretty high percentage. I mean, the difference between one human and another is like 0.999. Humans share 99.999% of their DNA, so the amount that makes us different is tiny, tiny, tiny. Of that amount that makes us different, those two siblings will share about half of it. These are their cousins. So, let's ask first, for these two siblings, where are their common ancestors? Where do they share an ancestor? Their parents. Their parents are their common ancestors. Your ancestor is anybody who is, related to you in the past. Their parents are their common ancestors. So, I forgot to draw Grandma Betty up here. Grandma Betty will be the first one who gets color. And there's Grandpa Joe. Well, his hair's gotten kind of weird the last few years, There we go.
That's like 2018 hair there.
Well, I don't know what kind of hair that is.
It's 2018.
So, these two siblings have these common ancestors. Now, these two siblings have what common ancestors? Their parents.
And their parents have their parents.
Well, let's ask this question. If we look at this person and this person, what's their relationship? Cousins. Where are their common ancestors?
Their aunt, or their mom and their aunt.
Nope.
Grandma.
They're grandparents. These are the common ancestors for those cousins. The further back now, do these cousins share more or less DNA than the siblings do? Less. Do they share more DNA than some random stranger we pluck off the street? Yeah. Because their common ancestor is further back in the past. Instead of their parents, it's their grandparents. If you go to your third cousin, you share more DNA with your third cousin than you do with some random stranger, but your common ancestor is further back in the past. So when we look at two species, we're going to talk about rabbits later this week. When we look at rabbit species, do they share a common ancestor? Yeah, they do. But European rabbits and North American rabbits are completely different species. They cannot interbreed. They look different. They have some different behavioral characteristics. Do they share a common ancestor? Yeah. But it's further back in the past. We use cladograms, and you already know this, to show how closely related two species are. The closer two species are on that cladogram, the more DNA they share, because they have a more recent common ancestor. And we've looked at that so far using structural evidence. So I believe Module 2 is where it builds cladograms for you based on DNA in the lizards. I said DNA wasn't the only chemical evidence. So has anybody here ever had, well, you don't have to answer this. Anybody know anyone who's had a blood transfusion? I've had blood. I've received blood products. So when you get blood, when I had surgery. I had my thyroid removed a couple years ago, and they give you blood when you have surgery because you lose blood. Hemoglobin is a protein in the blood, and hemoglobin is what moves oxygen around your body in your red blood cells. Essentially, hemoglobin is the wheelbarrow attached to your red blood cells. You fill up the hemoglobin, it sucks up oxygen, and then it carries oxygen to the cells where it's dispersed. So what's interesting is that all vertebrates use hemoglobin. You and a smallmouth bass and a mouse and a chicken and a snake and a frog, a turtle, a coyote, you all use hemoglobin. Now, the hemoglobin, and this is an actual picture of hemoglobin. It's a protein. Proteins are strings of amino acid that are folded up in particular shapes, which you knew. Human and gorilla hemoglobin are almost identical. Our hemoglobin is different from dog hemoglobin. It's different from pig hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. It's hard to say that fast. It's different from fish hemoglobin. But when we get into the primates, the hemoglobin's pretty similar, and ours and gorillas are only one amino acid off. That's a pretty easy mutation. Question?
More related to gorillas than
We are more related to chimps, and I don't actually know how different chimp hemoglobin is from ours. It may be more than one amino acid off. I'd have to look it up. Remember, we share an ancestor in the past. We also share an ancestor with gorillas. They're also a great ape. They're a tailless monkey, yes. Tomorrow, we are going to pick up with a little wrap-up on chemical evidence, and then we're going to look at some chemical cladograms. I know you can't wait.